Because I have a thing I do on X/Twitter or whatever you want to call it. I like to share polls of the election or the race at large. And if you follow the polls, right now, which I know you guys hate that shit. It's fine. I get that. Because I'm not someone that actually thinks the polls are 100% or even fucking 80% accurate. But looking at the polling right now, regarding the upcoming election, like it's clear it's going to be Biden against Trump. Trump's winning the nomination, barring death or somehow he goes to jail between now and November next year. But the polling right now, in my opinion, is very, very, let's say, concerning. So the last polls we had in the swing states that came out from the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, 5 of the swing states, of the 6 swing states, Donald Trump led in those states, including Nevada by 10 points. The only state that Biden was leading in those same swing states was in Wisconsin by point. Okay, Biden's disapproval numbers right now, as of 2 days ago, I have 5 numbers here: 54%, 54%, 50%, 56%, 57%. He's also losing the black vote and the young vote in drastic numbers. And I say this because look, it's not abnormal that a sitting president will have some disapproval, some struggles. I remember Obama, prior to the 2012 election, there's some people that were wondering if he'll lose to Romney because of the same thing, but obviously that didn't work out that way. There's a lot of concerns about this. And then to me, my biggest concern, especially in the last week or two, this is why I've been pressing on this. I think this Israel conflict could be a backbreaker, because I talked to a lot of folks in my family, and my family who are a bunch of Democrats have now told me they will not vote for Biden in 2024. Now, that doesn't mean they vote for Trump either, but it kind of has, at the very least, 2016 vibes right now, whereas turnout might be an issue for Mr. Biden in 2024. Now, you guys hate when I share polls. You guys hate this, and I get it. I'm with you on some degree with that. Am I being way overly concerned about this? Because on one hand, we have the polling, but then Democrats have done fairly well. They did well in the midterms in 2022. There was no red wave. Then last week, or 2 weeks ago rather, special elections, they did very well, especially red states. So something is not correlating here. Am I worrying too much on the optics here, or what? Where am I at here, Jim?
Yeah. I mean, again, as I've tried to tell you, and I'll let Rob handle that as well, is we're a year away, man. It's great if you're that into it and you want to talk about polls and read polls, and I think it's also important to understand where the polls are coming from, who's paying for the polls. I forget one. I just saw last night, it was revealed that one of the polls, and I wish I could remember which one it was, that was showing Trump with like a 6-point lead, was put on by a company that is financially backed by somebody connected to Trump. So it's very important to understand where polling comes from. I don't dive deep into it, especially not a year out. I think you may be kind of worrying a bit too much with a year to go. And the thing that I've said, I even said it in 2020. Now, I was concerned that Trump was going to win the election in 2020. Obviously he didn't. But then when it came to the midterms, when it came to the elections this month, I wasn't as concerned, because the trend that I think we've seen over the last couple cycles here is the younger generation, and I'm not even talking about myself. I mean, I'm 38, so I'm not
you're old.
I'm not lumping myself in that group, but like 35 and younger, 30 and younger, first time voters. They're a generation that I don't think is going to participate in a lot of polling. Like it's a generation that doesn't want to be bothered. It's a generation of, if my phone rings and I look at the number and I don't recognize it, I'm not answering it. I'm not responding to the text. I'm not responding. to the email. So I don't know that polling is going to necessarily provide us the most accurate showing of what the voting public is going to do. And I think we've seen that in especially in the midterms and especially in the elections this month, is that you're seeing a lot of young people who have their entire life watched war and gun violence, and now one crazy political party trying to strip their rights from them. Like these kids, they know they're going to be poor. They're going, they have college debt and a crazy housing market and a terrible job market. But like the one thing they're like, what you're not going to do from me is you're not going to take my rights away. So I think they're silently giving the middle finger to the polling and political establishment.
Interesting. Rob?
Okay, so here's something. So in July of 2011,
Mm-hmm.
Barack Obama's approval rating was 40%.
Yeah.
40. Okay.
That's pretty low.
Yeah.
Even for that era.
Yeah. And so, all right, it's a year out. And so when the people who do answer polls a year, there are people who are curious. Now there are people who are more likely to answer that, that they either won't vote for the incumbent or that they will vote for the other guy,
Mhm.
whoever they think that might be, or who might vote for somebody else. You're more likely to get those answers a year out because people aren't focused on it. They're I mean, if you're because look, nobody's 100% satisfied with any president, right? I
Right.
mean, and the way your voice your displeasure is to say you'll vote for someone else. And again, we're going on historical precedent here. And then also a lot of these polls, like Jim said, a lot of these polls are just poorly constructed. Um, Polling used to be a lot better, used to be a lot more accurate. Because like Jim said, people answered the phone. And one thing I don't understand with these polling companies, you'd probably get more people to answer the phone if you just put your damn name on the caller ID.
Right.
I mean, like if I see the phone, if I look on the caller ID and I see Gallup poll or Gallup polling, I'll answer that one because I want to see what they're asking about.
Yeah, that
Right.
was definitely
Like I'm not afraid of being in a poll, right? But if I look at my phone and I see some unknown number and I'm 49, I'm not even I'm not one of these younger people.
Yeah, no number, just a number.
I'm not
just a
answering
number
that
that
shit.
says political call.
I'm
not answering, but if
Well,
I
hell
see that
no.
it's a poll, I might participate. I'm with you.
Yeah, and so polling isn't as reliable as it used to be, but also polling used to be something you did for information. Now polling is it's content now.
Oh, no doubt about that. I do agree with that part.
And over the past, I don't know when exactly that took hold, but probably when cable news became more and more of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Polling is content now, and so, and you got to look at the sample sizes. You got to look at if a lot of times they don't even reveal like the makeup of the sample, and so like African American voters almost never get sampled properly, which is why you see like ridiculous things like 20% of the black vote going for Trump, which is never going to happen.
But he did pull double digits though with blacks in 2020 though. That is something to be said about that. He was the highest polling president to poll with blacks in
with black men
generations.
And I can look up now. Is that exit polling or is that like the because exit polling is notoriously inaccurate.
I think it was like 12-13% was
exit polling is terrible. You should never trust exit polling.
Right. I'm not sure it's exit polling. I'm sure exit polling was actual like polling after the fact.
Because like you don't find out like the more accurate polling on the election doesn't come for like 2 years after the election.
Right.
Exit polling that they get the day of the election is notoriously inaccurate. It's just terrible, and you should not trust it. Like that infamous 43%, I mean 53% of white women voting for Trump. Like that was exit polling. The actual number was like in the 40s. Okay. But that 53% number has been getting thrown around ever since.
Yeah.
Karl Rove of all people said don't trust exit polling because I think it was whether it was 2000 or 2004, the exit polling had Bush losing. Okay, early on.
But those races were tight though. I mean, so it wasn't far off.
But and I think it must have been 2004 that's when he actually got to 51%. But he of all people said don't trust exit polling because exit polling for people who don't know what exit polling actually is. Exit polling is they ask you when you're coming out of the polling place, somebody comes up to you and asks you like who you voted for, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, the trust they say is accurate, right?
And so imagine if it's hard enough to get people to answer the phone. Now, I may answer the phone to take a poll, but if I'm coming out of the voting place and some jerk comes up to me and says, "Hey man, who'd you vote for?" You know, they might get a go F yourself, leave me alone, okay, okay, or don't bother me, dude. I'm trying to go home, right? So I mean, it's just, and again, like the polling is content now, and I've said cable news in particular, they are in the business. They need a tight race. They need they need drama. They need anything might happen. Like that's what they need. They need that in the primaries and they need it in the general. The absolute worst thing that can happen for cable news is to have 2012
a perceived blowout.
Yeah, everybody can go to bed at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, that's because like 2012, right? Once the dust settled, once the dust settled with Obama and Romney, like I guess after the Democratic convention, it was over. I mean, Mitt had one good debate, and
the first debate Romney did very well, and in fact, I remember the polling after that first debate that Romney was ahead by I think a point,
and then very soon it went right back because so that happens sometimes because look, I mean, you get a bump at the convention,
right?
And then if you have a good debate, you might, if you have one, and Romney had one good debate and he got a bump from that, and then it went away,
right?
And so, but cable news in particular, they need content. Polling is content, and they will, and and I'm not going to say that they don't necessarily put the fix in on polls, but when they get a bad poll that they should just throw out, they don't.
Are there polls you do trust? Like, because my science of this, I always follow certain polls. Like Rasmussen is probably the most like conservative poll out there. I always take the Rasmussen poll, and I always take the most liberal poll, which is like Quinnipiac, and I kind of take the two and kind of put them in the middle because Rasmussen always sides more conservative. Quinnipiac is more lefty. So I take both those polls and I take the number in the middle, and then that's why I kind of close the numbers at.
Well, see, what I do is see there because there's a couple of people who I follow on Twitter who are more knowledgeable of reading polls and who have campaigned and whatnot. And so what I do is I go see what they have to say about the polls, and therefore, and then I pass judgment on that,
right?
Because to me that's the best thing to do is to find somebody who is honest and who knows what they're talking about,
right?
And see what they have to say about the polls. And so if they come out and say that, okay, this poll looks legit, then okay. So almost every one of these polls that showed Biden in trouble, has been easy to shoot down just from the methodology or from the sample, or by them not revealing what the sample, like the makeup of the polling sample. Or in some cases, you will literally get another poll the very next day that has the exact opposite result. And or like, for example, there was a poll in Ohio of people in Ohio that said the results said that 45% of Democrats were in favor of overturning Roe versus Wade, which is horseshit.
That reflected an election 2 weeks ago, rather.
Exactly, and there is no there is no place in America where 45% of Democrats were in favor of overturning Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
Okay, any poll that has
That's
that as a
bullshit.
result is you should just laugh at and throw out. Okay,
Absolutely, I agree with you on that one.
okay, but these are the same people doing the presidential polling.
Right.
So, right, I mean, and look, I mean, anything can happen, right? Especially now, and we're in an era of where like voter suppression is on steroids, and so that can easily just screw up the turnout in
Of course.
swing states if people are not vigilant about that. Um, to me, and look, honestly, that's the thing. If that's the thing to actually be mindful of, not these polls. It's it's this voter suppression stuff because if if that stuff kicks in Wisconsin or I think Pennsylvania is safe now because of the governor and all of that stuff. I don't think they'll be able to do that there, but someplace like Wisconsin or North Carolina or Georgia, right? I mean, yes, those are places where the voter suppression could tip the election in that state. So, I mean, you do have to be mindful of that. But, I mean, the political media, again, because here's what happened, right? All right, so so 1996, the election was over before it started between
Dole and Clinton, right?
Yeah. And then, but in 2000, we had the recount, and it went into December, and it went to the Supreme Court, and so people, and then people were turning to the news every day to see what the hell was going on, right? And then so that's the first little thing you see, like, oh, okay, well this stuff sells. If the election is in doubt or whatever, people are going to turn to our channel to see what's going on. All right, so then that was 2020. That was 2000. 2004 was close, so again, same thing. And then in 2008, you had like the most nail biter presidential primary probably ever between Hillary and Obama, where they literally had to go and have it settled with the DNC. The people in charge of the DNC had to literally settle the dispute of how the nomination would be decided. Okay, so that was the most nail biter presidential primary, at least in our lifetime, maybe ever. Okay,
right.
And that got and so people were tuning in every day. So now, not just at the general election you want drama. Now, we can have drama in the primaries now.
Yeah.
And so what happens in 2016? I mean, in reality, Hillary wiped the floor with Bernie Sanders. If you watch cable news, that's not what you saw, though. What you saw is that, Bernie might do it. Bernie might pull it out. Oh, Bernie has a chance. Bernie had no chance. Bernie got his ass kicked from jump. Okay. In 2016, but they didn't.
That's a whole other kind of words. The whole Bernie Sanders.
But
that's a whole other podcast.
That's not the story
right now.
That's not the story they told you. The
Right.
story they told you was that it was close and that Bernie might pull it out and this, that, and the other, and he got the shit kicked out of him. Okay. All right. And so, I'm just that's one of my little pet peeves because, I mean, he got the shit kicked out of him, and a lot of people believed that it was really close and that he had a chance, and they believed that the DNC rigged it and all this other shit, and that's not true. He got his ass kicked because he didn't campaign for any black votes, and some black people didn't vote for him. He got the shit kicked out of him. All right, that's what happens, and it's documented. All right, his own campaign people were saying, "Hey, man, we need to open some campaign offices where black people live," and and they didn't do that, and he's running against people who have long-standing relationships with black voters, like Hillary Clinton, like Joe Biden, and so he got the shit kicked out of him. All right, I'm just going on a rant there because people need to. I'm never going to let that go, because you had people all the way up to the damn election day talking about it was rigged. It was rigged. They screwed Bernie. That's why I'm not going to vote for Hillary, because they screwed Bernie. Hillary cheated. Okay, and that's one of the reasons we got stuck with Trump, you jackasses. All right, and I'm sorry, I'm not letting it go. I'm not letting that go.
So you're saying that a lot of it is more theater than actual reality?
Yes.
In terms of for Bernie, for example, the Bernie thing.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was, and it was absolutely theater. and he had zero chance. I mean, once people actually started voting, he had zero chance.
Because you know, someone who's a Bernie supporter is going to say, well, you're probably just an establishment Democratic voter who votes for the Joe Bidens and the Hillary Clintons of the world, and
you're damn right I am. You're damn right I am.
Did you own that, right?
I have no problem with that. I wear that jersey. I have no problem with it. That's not an insult to me. You can't. Hey, look, if you think you're going to insult me by calling me that, you got another thing coming. All right. Okay. You are. I'm sorry. Okay. I that does not bother me one bit. Okay?
I admire the authenticity of that statement. I really do.
Because I mean, look, if you want somebody who's not establishment, then damn it, they need to go win the damn election. Okay, it's that simple. If you don't like Nancy Pelosi, being the Speaker of the House, then you know what? Then somebody, one of these quote unquote younger people should have challenged her for the position. And
the argument for them is that they say it's rigged against them no matter what.
But it's not.
Okay.
Because you're a fucking idiot if you think it's rigged. Okay, you can't rig.
It's easier to cry foul than it is to admit that you lost.
No, fair point.
Okay, okay. Look, first of all, you don't have a national primary. You have 50. It's more than 50 because some states have a primary and a caucus. So you don't have a national primary. You have 50 some different contests. All of them got different rules. Every state has its own rules for how you can be registered to vote in the primary. You cannot rig the process because it's too damn complicated. Okay, you can't rig all those separate things. Okay, because I mean you got to literally have like campaign operatives in every state, and no primary campaign has that type of organization in every state because nobody has enough money to do that. Okay, you staff up big in the states that are important to the winning the primary. Okay, Pennsylvania, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Michigan, Maryland, California, Massachusetts, New York. All right, you staff up big in those states and you win those states. And the only exception to that was 2008 because Obama again had the best primary campaign organization ever in the history of politics.
Oh God, yeah.
Because
that grassroots run was
they calculated down to the very okay, we don't this is how much we need to get in Pennsylvania. We're not going to win Pennsylvania, but this is how much we need to get. And they went and they got it, and then they racked up all the small states because and then they got the black vote, which would have gone for Hillary, flipped to him basically because he's black and he was viable. Okay, because those same black people didn't vote for Al Sharpton in 2004. Okay, they voted for John Kerry in 2004. Okay, but they saw Obama was the real thing, and hey, this guy can actually win the election. So we're going to actually get behind him. Okay. And they knew that, and they played it perfectly, and that's how they were able to pull out the win over Hillary in 2008. Bernie didn't do that, and Bernie counted on people to vote who don't actually vote in primaries. And
that's interesting. That's actually interesting you say that. So I asked you guys this then, given because like this is the thing with me. I work at a job where I work with a lot of employees, with a lot of customers, and we talk politics all the time, and I have to say, Joe Biden is not very, even with Democratic support, Joe Biden is not popular. So, do you recognize that Joe Biden probably not viable? Maybe. I mean, do you recognize that Joe Biden is concerned about Joe Biden, whether it be his age, maybe be policy, maybe the gaps? I don't know. Do you think that's all smokescreen? Because I hear too much of that from actual voters to ignore that on the ground. Forget this polling. It's all like people I talk to on a normal basis, and you're talking about like tens, hundreds of people I talk to, a lot about this stuff, and it's even from voters who are left leaning are concerned.
Well, when they actually have to vote, and there's Biden on one side, there's Trump on the other. And the reality is, if you don't vote for Biden, Trump will win the election, and Trump will be in office. And Trump has already vowed to, he's going to put people in jail and he's going to execute people. He's actually said he's going to do this kind of thing. And you see that they put Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade. And when you see
that backfired politically anyway.
And when you see, these other people in office, I mean, like this Speaker of the House he's not just a full MAGA true believer. He's a right-wing Christian conservative true believer.
Mike Johnson, Johnson.
And who thinks that gay people are going to hell and all this kind of stuff. He's one of those type of folks. I mean, the reality is, if Biden does not win re-election, that's who's going to be in charge. Okay, and
the problem is also you have the squishy middle independents, NPAs, who are saying, "Yeah, but my wallet was better 4 years ago on the Trump." I'm not making a case of Trump. I'm not saying
was it really?
No, I'm not saying. I'm telling you what was being said.
It's a disingenuous argument, and people
agreed. Jim, I agree with you.
I'm lying to themselves because
people
here we are, but here we are. We're sitting here with the lowest national average gas price, and that has nothing to do even with the president, but people think it's
true.
The lowest national average on gas prices at Thanksgiving since 2019. Okay, so all right, so who did that then, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
what administration is creating jobs? I understand there was a pandemic, but there was also a guy who can't read a meeting report to understand what the pandemic is that's coming and to be prepared for it. So I think there is a bit of smokescreen there with it. Like a lot of the things that they're saying about Joe Biden going into 2024 is the same stuff they were saying in 2020. And
the difference is that we now have a Joe Biden 4 years of 3.5 years now, or 3 years of Joe Biden now to run on against. If you disagree with, if you believe that the inflation is his fault, which honestly it isn't, because we will still be here with Trump as the president. Put it away. I'm telling you right now.
Oh, absolutely. And I would argue that would have probably be worse. But again, it's global inflation. It's not even just here in the US.
Right.
But the other thing that isn't being measured, and it's not, of course, it's not being measured by Fox, but it's also not being measured by MSNBC or CNN or any of these other places that are theoretically liberal fake news, right? That's the thing we always heard for 4+ years with Donald Trump. Is we also have had 4 years of Donald Trump becoming increasingly more dangerous in his rhetoric, and increasingly, and the more that the walls cave in on him legally, we're seeing him become more and more unhinged, and we're going to have another year of that. Like this dude's already telling us what he's going to do. Like it's not even hyperbole anymore. It's not even people giving their opinion about what they think a Trump presidency, if reelected, might be. He's literally going in front of his speech crowds and telling us what he's going to do if he's reelected. So it's not even liberal fake news as the Trumpers like to tell us. It's literally what the man is telling us he's going to do. And he is in his first 4 years had set up to do. So people can talk. People can be, I'm not happy with Biden. But again, you got to walk in there and you got to make a choice. Is it Biden and my rights, or is it literally the potential to change the fabric of what this country is?
Or is it RFK Jr.? Because
no, it's not.
No.
No, it's not.
But again, no. But I agree with you. But again, the rhetoric is out there.
Here's the deal, man. I will actually be shocked if he actually stays in this thing until November of next year.
Well, that's the thing. I'm skeptical of too. Will he be on the ballot by the time we get to November next year?
I don't think he will be. I think this is him just trying to, pad his pockets and make a little bit of a name for himself and get attention on himself. Also, keep in mind, again, the day we're recording this is 60 years to the day that his, that his uncle was murdered. So, when you're talking about I think he is just it's all about getting eyes and getting money on him. He's a Republican in Democrats' clothing. He rides on his family name, but that firecracker is going to wear itself out, and I don't think he's even going to be. You don't think
it's a thirst though?
No.
I think it's a thirst of third party though.
No. No,
I don't.
no. The one. There's only been one third party candidate who got any type
Ross
of
Perot.
and Ross Perot bought primetime television time. Okay, he bought the time. That's how he got on television, because he bought it because he had enough money to buy television time on all three major networks. RFK Jr. does not have that type of money, and so he is very much an internet thing, and to actually sustain a campaign, he does not have the funding to do that. He definitely doesn't have the funding to buy himself primetime television. And also, I mean, when he actually, if you actually ask him about his views, he's like a crazy anti-vaxxer, and all a bunch of other stuff.
Which I find is dumb on his part, because look, say what you want about the anti-vax thing, whatever. Like,
they're idiots.
He would gain more traction if he actually give out his policy ideas.
Well,
outside of that,
anti-vaxxers are idiots. Let me just say that point. If you're an anti-vaxxer and you're listening to this podcast, don't get mad at Ernest. Get mad at me. I'm calling you an idiot.
No, you can get mad at me too. You are an idiot.
You can get mad at me too, because you can go fuck yourself.
Right.
If that's who you are.
Period in the story. Okay. No. Okay. Because every last one of these people who was anti-vaxxer today has already been pumped full of vaccines.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're born into it.
And okay. But anyhow, no, the third party stuff is bullshit. People express interest in a third party because they just, because there's reason to be dissatisfied with both parties.
Sure.
And every election, it's always, it's always going to be one or the other. But our political system cannot handle, first of all, a viable political party. You got to have money, you got to have organization, you got to be able to run in every state, you got to be able to cover all that ground. It is just not doable for more than two parties, basically.
No, you're not gonna change it at the top. Like, if you actually want there to be a viable third party, it has to start at the local and state levels, and you have to change the system from the foundation. You're never gonna have a third party change the system at the House, at the Senate, at in the White House. It's just it's never going to happen.
No, I mean it's not. And these third party folks, they never do that. They run some stupid presidential campaign, or they might run for governor or senator or something, and they wait till they don't do any type of organization up and leading up to it. They come out there either in the election year itself or the year before, and they say, "Hey, I'm running for blah blah blah."
The RFK their people couldn't get a teleprompter to work. Come on, like it's not a serious candidate.
And he's running independent now, so he doesn't even have any primaries to win, right?
Yeah. Right.
So, in a hypothetical scenario, he could do better than expected in some primaries if he were in one of those two parties, and then he could manufacture some momentum, right? If something like that happened, right? But since he's not in a party, he can't even get a win in the news now, right? Like he can't finish second in Iowa when people thought he would finish 8th, right? Yeah. He can't do that now because he's not in a party. So, because that's what Clinton did in 92, right? He didn't win the initial primaries, but he kept finishing like second place there. And then eventually that kept him going, and then eventually he started finishing in first place. Actually, that happened with Trump in 2016, right?
Super Tuesday put him over the top. Super Tuesday.
Yeah, and then but RFK, any third party candidate who's not in a party he doesn't have any victories to get to in January, right? To get his name in the headlines. It's just, and then once people get more serious about it, then he won't be in the papers anymore. And also, I mean, the thing about Biden, like you can claim all types of crazy stuff about Joe Biden, but the thing is, when people actually sit there and listen to him talk, none of the crazy stuff is true.
But you
Which
have to
is-
sell. But you have to sell to people who are having the doubts. That's the question.
But once they listen to him talk, you find out that the crazy stuff people have been saying is not true.
Rob, I think you're giving people too much credit. Honestly.
Okay.
Is he though? Look
No,
at look at 2020.
I don't think he's wrong. I'm saying that you give people credit.
But my point is the all the rhetoric, all the crazy stuff about Biden was there before the 2020 election, and look what happened. He smoked Trump,
and also,
and we heard about the red wave in 2018, and we heard about
see that's the thing that's throwing me off
there.
though, is that
Like,
you say that, and then like you have these people say, "Oh, Biden's in trouble," and then these results will come in, you know,
which is what I've been trying to tell you.
Because here's what happens.
If you're a slave to the polls, then you're gonna like believe what they say. You're gonna panic on what they say. Like, I don't even pay attention to them. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna walk in that booth. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. That's all I can control.
I think what concerns me though is that when I'm hearing people in my own family who are normally politically engaged now telling me that they're not going to vote for Joe Biden next year, and he's all Democrats for the record. And granted, they're not saying they're vote for Trump, but there's something to be said with a lot of stuff going on here with, you know, the Israel conflict too, especially too. Which, by the way, the Israel thing is a no-win situation for Joe Biden, because these same people who are pro-Palestine, you know, not going to vote for Biden, which I get on principle, you won't do that. You do realize Donald Trump is, if not worse, on that issue than Joe Biden is, actually.
Okay, now here's the thing with that, though. All right, it doesn't look very good right now, but however this thing gets resolved, it will be resolved by it will not be an issue in October of next year. It will be. You're
hoping for out of sight, out of mind situation might be from now.
Yes, I mean, to be perfectly honest, yes.
Do you realize how many crises there's going to be between now and then?
Yeah,
the one concern will say though, like, okay, so in Michigan, for example, I think there's over 20,000 Arab Americans that live in Michigan, for example, swing state for the record. Biden won that by only 10,000 votes in 2020. Okay, the rhetoric is that almost none of the Arab Americans that now obviously could change their mind in a year to come, but the rhetoric is that most, if not all of them, are not going to vote for Joe Biden at all in 2020. So if you go by those metrics, of course, that's a win for Trump in the assumption that does play out that way.
Well, and that's also the assumption that people are going to go in and vote for Trump if they're not voting for Biden.
But if you don't vote for Trump, though, that still lessens the Democratic vote there.
But if Biden had 10,000 more votes than Trump did, and 20,000 people who voted for Biden don't vote for him, I mean, you're also under the assumption that everybody that voted for Trump is going to do it again and is going to absolutely vote again in 2024.
No, true. No,
you know what I mean? So right. And again, like to Rob's point, we're a year away. A lot of people can talk. You can talk a really big game 12 months out. And you can look at whatever crisis there is today and how it's going to impact you 12 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
But man, what was the biggest crisis in November of 2022? You probably can't remember.
Roe v. Wade and the gun control situation, which honestly you could argue was the reason why there was
but those two things have been an ongoing.
But the undoing of Roe v. Wade, though, the actual undoing of Roe v. Wade happened 6 months prior to that election.
Right. But that was a thing that Trump ran on in 20, that was kind of on his list of agendas in 2016 when he ran.
But that's a fringe issue to the far right, but most 3/4 of the country doesn't want Roe v. Wade overturned.
Exactly.
I understand that, but maybe I didn't make my point.
What are you gonna say?
Is that the Israel-Palestine thing? Yes, right. It is a big deal now because it's at the forefront of the news. There was something that was a flash, at last fall that we don't even remember was a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Today. So like. The thing that the people saying they're not going to vote for Biden because of this conflict with Israel and Palestine. That's easy to. My point is, it's easy to say a year away.
And let's let me give you another example. Okay, with a Bush 41. All right, Desert Storm was like the most successful military operation we ever had.
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
and while that was going on, it went so well that everybody said he was a shoe-in to get reelected. The Democrat.
Yeah, his approval numbers went through the roof in
And
91.
the Democrats shouldn't have to. They shouldn't even bother, right? Okay, there's no way he's going to lose. And then Desert Storm wrapped up, and what happened? We had a recession that hit at the most inopportune time.
Right.
Okay, and that torpedoed that did him in, and nobody gave a shit about Desert Storm anymore. Okay, so now if something really bad happens next summer, then yeah, okay. Or look what happens after Bush W got reelected in 2004. They were serious people, not just right-wing operatives, but they were serious people talking about permanent Republican majority because they had thought that the Republican Party had cracked the code to winning over like moderate voters for the foreseeable future. Okay, and it really did look that way, that they had cracked the code, that they would win over. Well, I should specify moderate white voters. Okay, and it looked like
I'll admit I was one of the Bush voters in the 2004 reelection. So
well, I'm not condemning anybody for doing that. I mean, okay, look, voting for George W. Bush is not like voting for Trump. Okay, it's
I
not.
agree with that. 100%.
Okay, but there were serious people thinking that the Republican Party had cracked the code with moderate white voters, and that I mean, not that they would win in blowouts from here on out, but that they would just win these elections for president. They would win. They would keep control of the Senate and all of this stuff because they had cracked the code. And it didn't even take 2 years for everything to go to shit.
Well, because the Iraq War, the WMDs that never came to be, and
but then Katrina happened.
Katrina happened, of course, and then, it was ripe. It was ripe for a new guy. Obama came in at the right time.
But a lot of those things that happened were a result of the decisions that the Bush administration had made during the first term. Right.
True. Right.
Okay. So I mean, those things were not accidents. The cleanup for Katrina being as bad as it was partially a result of putting Brownie in charge of FEMA. Okay. The WMD stuff going bad was entirely their decision making.
Yeah.
And then the financial crisis again was very much a consequence of some of their decision making. But it took, and then you had a bunch of Republicans in Congress getting hauled off to jail for corruption.
Yeah.
And so it took less than 2 years for all that permanent majority talk to go to shit. So things can happen really fast. And
yeah, it's true.
So look, put it this way. Nothing has happened up to this point that would have me concerned about him getting reelected.
So you feel good about Joe Biden's reelection chances? You do?
I think, but whatever. By the time I think ultimately it will all wash out, and you will have him saying what he says on one side, and you will have Trump saying what he says on the other side. And don't forget, we have all these mass shootings that keep happening. And what happens every time a mass shooting? You see Democrats saying we need better gun regulation, and you have Republicans saying thoughts and prayers. And people are seeing that over and over again. That don't think that doesn't have an effect on anything. Okay, all right. I mean, because see what's happening now. See, the Republicans used to be better at talking in code, and also they used to be better at not letting the crazy people actually be in charge.
Right.
And now the crazy people are in charge, and not just Trump, but people like Taylor Green and Johnson, and I mean, like those people are in charge now. And they're not, they don't talk in code. They just come out and blurt everything out.
And they also don't talk policy anymore either.
And so, and it's just, it's different now. And look, I'm not saying we'll win a blowout because these things aren't blowouts anymore. Not really. But it's just, I believe that unless if some really bad stuff happens next year, then yes. Then yes, it's trouble. But if nothing really bad happens next year,
define bad. Rob, for me? What could be a bad thing that could happen between that could actually impact a Biden loss next year?
Katrina, something like Katrina, something like we get attacked, right? And or something like, something where he actually gets named in a scandal, not Hunter. Okay.
Right.
That something like that. I mean, those type of things. Or if we do have an actual recession where people are out in like food lines all over the place and shit, right? I mean, something like that, right? Not gas prices, okay? Not that, okay? Not inflation, and okay, no, that's not going to do it, all right? Because people, I mean, these people are talking about inflation all the time, and it's just a thing people say on TV all the time now. I mean, and I mean, because even when the prices go down, they're still talking about inflation, right? I mean, so it's almost like empty rhetoric, to be honest. But something substantively, something that's actually substantively bad has to happen. Because remember with Katrina, right? You saw the images on the news where it looked like something out of a dystopian movie or something, right?
Yeah.
And you couldn't escape that. Or when the images came out, with Abu Ghraib
and that was COVID for the Trump of 2020. It was COVID.
Yeah, like you couldn't escape that, right?
No,
you couldn't escape seeing pictures of, ambulances full of dead bodies,
temporary morgues sitting, tractor trailers that were used as temporary morgues outside of hospitals.
Right.
Jim, let me ask you this quick. Do you feel confident in Biden next year also? Are you?
I'm with Rob right now. I do. And honestly, because me leading up to 2020, I was nervous about.
I had to calm you down a couple of times, remember?
You did. But the midterms and what happened this year in the elections have given me hope, and seeing again, I look at these voters in their 20s and look, we're going to have a bunch of new people that are going to turn 18 between now and next year. And again, to Rob's point, like the more mass shootings and school shootings, and because they're not going away.
Yeah.
I hate to be able to say like, yeah, we're going to have a bunch more mass shootings, but we will, because that's who we are. And the generation that's literally watched their friends get murdered next to them in their schools are the ones that are going, we're tired of this. Again, it's a generation of people that are like, no matter what, I need to have my rights.
Because look, I mean, one thing, because like during when W was in office, we still the assault weapons ban was still on the books. And there weren't as many mass shootings.
Yeah,
but the assault weapons ban expired while he was in office, and we've all these mass shootings that just ballooned since then.
Just the irony of the Republicans of today talking about how Ronald Reagan would never regulate our firearms. Motherfuckers, he was the one that initiated the fucking
he's also pro immigration too. Pro immigration as well too.
Yeah.
Bush. And let's not forget that Ronald Reagan he became Mr. Gun Regulation when the Black Panthers marched on the State House in California. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, he became Mr. Gun Regulation when he saw the brothers in the State House packing heat. Okay,
yeah.
Let's not forget that. Okay,
it's barring something unforeseen, sitting here today, less than 365 days away from the election, I am fairly confident that Biden's going to get reelected. Also because I feel like Trump just continues to light his own fuse, man.
I think that's the one thing, though, I think Biden in his pocket is that Trump, he can't keep his mouth shut, dude. He just can't. Nope. And he sounds worse. He's getting worse now, too. It's like, even if you're someone that's kind of squishy in a way where, like, you can go either way. You don't like Trump, you like some of the policies. Trump is starting to remind you of why you didn't vote for him in 2020. It's like, oh wait, now I know I didn't vote for this guy in 2020.
Here's the thing, and I think the because I've seen the the dark Brandon mugs and the dark Brandon signs and things. Like the Biden campaign is already starting to like lean into like just how crazy Trump's getting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is going to be a very smart thing over the next 12 months is like, you know, everybody talks about Biden losing his mental faculties. But we're seeing it in real time accelerating with Donald Trump. And I think that the Biden campaign needs to really lean into that, and I think they will, and I think that's going to help them too.
And
Well,
just and
mhm.
and another thing with Biden,
Yeah.
Biden's strength is that he's actually a normal dude.
Yeah.
And now that's a weakness when you're running against Obama in the primary, right?
Yes.
Okay, because Obama is this extraordinary politician and all of this type of stuff. You can't be a normal dude and run against Barack Obama.
Mm-mm.
You can, but being a normal dude and running against Donald Trump is a strength. Okay. And also, like all this stuff, people are going, Biden senile, Biden this, Biden that. When you listen to him actually talk at length, he's not senile.
And he's doing things too. Also, like you may not agree with what he's doing, but you can't sit there and say he's not doing things. Like you can't have both ways. You can't say, "Oh, I like what he's doing," but he's not doing anything. No, he's doing things. You may not agree with it, but he's doing things.
And
Infrastructure, the whole nine. He's the most pro-union president we've had in generations.
yeah, and even and look with all this stuff going on with Israel and Palestine, our political our political system has been kind of captive to just making these statements about being, pro-Israel, this, that, and the other, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and regardless of of how they actually approach the actual policy on the ground dealing with stuff, but
Right.
just from a rhetoric standpoint, so I understand people being just completely angry and dissatisfied with because with the rhetoric that is being said about, supporting Israel and all this type of stuff, because and that's just it kind of is what it is. And like until you have to get a whole new generation of politicians with a different outlook on that before that rhetoric is going to change. Because we're talking, and look, even us, look, we were taught in school growing up that Israel are good guys, Palestine are the PLO, right? I mean, you're talking decades of people being taught that in school, right?
Yeah.
And it being reinforced on the nightly news and then politicians of all stripes kind of echoing those same sentiments. That's not going to change overnight. And well, now, I guess one of the positive things about, I guess, like social media, the internet and all that is that there are people on the ground there who are getting out reports and, images of what's actually happening. And so some people are seeing that, like this, the stories that our governments are being and our news people are being fed by government sources are not accurate. And people are actually seeing that for the first time now. And so there's, hopefully that will lead to some, change in rhetoric going in the future, and maybe a change in policy down the road as far as how we deal with all this stuff. But then the other thing is you kind of have to tread lightly the way you talk about this stuff, because you can mean well if you can have the best of intentions, but you start talking about, holding Israel accountable for their actions or whatever. The problem with that is that you open the door for all the bigots to come sit at the table and grab the microphone. The same way, like if we talk about, well, we need more accountability in the Black community. Okay, the problem with that is when we start saying that, and then some racist white guy thinks he can come in there and start, talking Rush Limbaugh kind of talk, right? So you tread lightly when you say things like that, because you don't want to invite those kind of people into the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it can lead to some very kind of frustrating things being said. And that is a source of the frustration or the anger that some people have towards the Biden administration right now, because they have to tread lightly with how they talk about this stuff, because you cannot invite the people to the table to speak who are anti-Semitic folks, and you don't want people coming to the table to speak who are, or Islamophobes either, to say bad things about Palestinian people, right? You have to manage the situation so that none of those people feel like you're giving them a space to come talk, because they will. And that's ultimately, and it's dissatisfying, right? It is not satisfying to anybody to hear this kind of overly careful kind of rhetoric about the whole thing. But again, that's happening now. It will not be in the news. However it gets resolved, it will not be in the news next year.
All right, we went an hour to that. I'm glad we did that, and I'm sure we're gonna do this again between now and next November, because this is gonna be. I know they say this every single cycle, but I really believe this is gonna be the craziest election cycle of our lifetime. Just because of the fact that, number one, you have one guy that's literally on 4 charges, 91 counts on 4 charges, running for president. The other guy's 81 years old now. I mean, it's insane.
And that guy with 91 counts is 78 years old. Everybody wants to report Biden's age. Let's not forget that Trump is 78 and at least visibly in worse health than Joe Biden is. So if we're gonna talk about one guy's age, let's talk about. I mean, Biden bikes how many miles a week? Trump eats how many cheeseburgers a week?
Someone's working. But you guys do agree that Donald Trump will be a nominee for the GOP, right? You agree?
I mean, as long as he's not in prison and literally not allowed to, yeah, he will be.
Yeah, it's fascinating how big he is, how big in the polls he is at this point. It's insurmountable at this point.
And because look, the Republicans have sold their soul to him.
Yeah,
and plus all the other candidates all suck.
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing. I mean, they don't do anything they don't generate any type of real excitement.
Remember in late 2021 when DeSantis was going to be the guy? Oh, boy, has that changed.
Yeah,
and they got nothing else.
No personality whatsoever. First off,
none. I mean, none of these people. Yeah, I mean, none of them, and a whole lot of them are running for president is it's a grifting operation.
Right, and that's the problem with Republicans is they have. To be a viable Republican candidate right now, you have to follow the Trump rhetoric. So, but most of them, either they don't believe it or they're still trying to catch up to whatever level of crazy he is today. So why would you go with the imitation when you could go with the real thing? And if the real thing isn't available and can't even use his voice anymore, then all of these people that were just waiting to see what he said next so they could go, yeah, what he said, but this, they'll have nothing either.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of my buddies is a Trump guy. He goes, Trump's going to start his own party at some point. I'm like, why would he? He has the two major parties.
The Republican Party is his party. Why would
you want to do that for?
Why would he go through the work of creating something different when he's already just taken over what was there?
And
makes no sense at all.
And plus, he doesn't have the money to do that. He's broke.
Yeah.
There's that too.
I mean, because he uses the Republican Party to raise money, and that's the other thing. He's sucking up all the donor money for his stuff, right?
Yeah, he's good at this shit though. At least with
he's good at conning people.
Yeah,
he's a businessman. He's a great con man. Absolutely. Yeah. He's been doing it for his whole life.
Yeah.
All right, that's what's scary.